I was muted. What's going on, Badger fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Badgers. The Badgers got another commitment. Let's break down the Hank Weber commitment. Plus, a question is Daniel Freitag the best recruiting win Greg Gard has had in his tenure? Plus, your comments, your questions, a live show, wherever you want to take this. Let's go on Wisconsin.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Badgers. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings, as always. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is the official sports book of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. All right, let's talk about it because once again, for the second time in 2 days, we have to
fire the recruiting cannons. Another one is headed to Madison on Wisconsin.
Let's go. A bunch of people in the comments. Rio, as always, good friend of the show. Rio C jumping on says, "Let's go." Let's talk Hank Weber. So Hank Weber, defensive lineman who, isn't the highest rated player that Wisconsin is after along the defensive line, but he commits to the Badgers. 6'4", 6'5", 260-pound defensive lineman out of Tennessee, out of Brentwood Academy, Tennessee, commits. He had a really nice offer list that was starting to build. Offers from North Carolina, Vanderbilt, so you're talking high academic schools, and then some SEC schools are starting to get on him. Mississippi State, Michigan State was in on him, Georgia Tech was in, so that's another high academic school, and others. So from an offer standpoint, you like where this is going, right? This was a player that was building up a pretty strong offer list. I like the film. I talked about it. Again, if you're in the Discord, come join us in the Discord. This was a guy who, before he committed, before even he had the visit, I said, I really like this film. And again, I am an amateur film guy. Take that for what it's worth. But I think he's explosive off the line of scrimmage. I think he gets this rep, and I've already seen it thrown around as, this feels like a typical Badger lineman, like Ethan Hemer, going back to old school. I think he's got more juice than that. I really do. I think there's some short area explosiveness, which as a defensive lineman, let's face it, that's what matters, right? The 40 speed, the long distance. I mean, he doesn't have that. He's not a freak athlete. He's not Alec James, for example, coming out of high school. He's not Erasmus James, obviously. He's not that type of athlete, but I think in the short area, he gets off the line of scrimmage really well. He puts offensive tackles kind of on their backs with that. He's good with his hands, and he offers positional versatility. This is a player who he's going to be 280, 290 with a good burst off the line, good functional strength. I think he can play inside. I think he can play outside. So somebody that you can slot all across the defensive line. I like the pickup. I really do. I get the notion that it can be when you see some of the other defensive line prospects Wisconsin's on, right? Ume, Stone, among others. There's 4 and 5 star guys Wisconsin's after. You don't necessarily love seeing the 3-star prospect come in. Wes Mullenix said, I want to see some high 4 stars and 5 stars. We're not going to compete with Ohio State if this doesn't start happening. I agree. Like, the talent has to upgrade, but along the defensive line, you also need numbers, right? That's something Brian Smith on the show with us talked about. You just need numbers. You need waves upon waves of people on the defensive line. And the other thing the thing with recruiting, right? And it's funny because I fall victim to this as well. I want 4 stars. I want to go to Rivals or On3 or 247 and pull up the Badgers recruiting list. And I want to see 4 and 5 star icons next to all of the recruits. Like, it gets me pumped up too. Like, I get that. I really do. But the difference between a high 3-star and a low 4-star player is essentially nothing in the recruiting. And like Rivals, I don't want to minimize it. Like, stars matter. Please don't misunderstand my statement. Stars absolutely matter. That's why the best recruiting teams are the best teams in college football, have all 4 and 5-star guys. But the difference between a really high 3-star type guy, which I think Weber can eventually be, and a very low 4-star guy isn't that much, in my opinion, especially on the defensive line where, it's a little harder to project along the defensive line and the offensive line, in my opinion. So I like the pickup. I think it's a good one. And the other thing that I would talk about is it's a faith exercise, right? This new staff, it's still an exercise of faith. And we've talked so much about Do you believe in this staff in terms of player identification, development? And if you do, this is a plan A target. Remember, everybody they're taking a commitment from right now, not everybody that's on a visit, not everybody that they're talking to, right? It's different, but everybody that they're taking a commitment from right now is a plan A target for them. That's really important to remember because this staff is in on a lot of defensive linemen, and there is a lot of time left in this recruiting cycle. And they feel that Weber is a plan A guy. They feel he's a guy they can take whenever they are. It feels like he's a guy they can take immediately because they're not going to find enough defensive linemen better than him the rest of this cycle. So if you believe in this staff, which I do, by the way, and if you believe in their ability to evaluate and find talent, then I wouldn't necessarily look at this guy as just a 3-star. I think he's a 3-star with upside. He does now. Let's be honest too, because I do want to always try to be honest and real on this show, even if I tend optimistic. I'm not quite believe with Rajiv, but I lean optimistic. I try to look at when I recruit commits. I try to look at the good things and project out. If we're looking at the totality of the recruit, why is he a 3-star? Why is he not a 4-star? He doesn't have the frame, right? Some of the other defensive linemen we're on, some of the elite defensive linemen, you're talking a bigger frame, bigger arms, longer arms, more long speed, more twitchiness. He doesn't have those things in his toolbox, but what he does have is enough to be a really good college football player. I think I like the fact that there's a lot of clips when you watch his film. He's running plays down from the backside. He has a great motor, already pretty strong. I think you feel very comfortable at the very least. He's going to hold up on rush defense. And again, I really think he has a great first step. I think the quickness is there to be able to be an impactful pass rusher. So I think there's enough here to get excited about. He's not the highest upside player, though. So that's a fair statement for anybody saying, I don't think this guy's a ceiling raiser. I would probably agree with that. I do think he is more than a depth piece, though. I think, again, they're not taking people right now that they don't really believe in. And that's the crux of why you should get excited about this, in my opinion. They're taking people right now that they're excited about because it's not late in the cycle. They're not trying to fill spots. They're in on a lot of defensive linemen, and they still opened the door to Hank Weber and said, yeah, you're in this class. We want you desperately because that's what this is right now. These are the plan A targets. All right, let's get some comments here. Elkin says they're planning to take up around 3 more defensive linemen, which I'm happy about since we have so many highly rated recruits at defensive line. Yeah, they're going to get numbers here, right? They're going to absolutely get numbers here. Justin's in the queue. I can't let you in because I would have to alter the graphics, Justin. We have a new graphics package. I don't think I can actually bring Justin into this. I will try. So Elkin, yeah, you need numbers at the spot, right? You need defensive linemen at the spot. So the more numbers they can get in here, the better. I think this is a heavy defensive line class. They only brought in Jamel Howard last cycle. So they definitely need to add bodies there. I agree with you there. Let's get some more comments here. Let's take a quick break for the show. I have to come back. We're going to talk about more of your comments. And then is Daniel Freitag Greg Gard's best recruiting win? Not best player, but best recruiting win. We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at FanDuel. If I pulled them up, FanDuel is our number one sportsbook option. It's who we go to for all of our betting needs, and it's the easiest, safest, most secure sportsbook in the world. Instant payouts, none of that messing around trying to get your payouts if you hit your parlay, talking to someone in a different country, any of that. FanDuel instant payouts, incredibly easy to use. And with the NBA playoffs going on right now, take a fast break over to FanDuel. Get your no sweat first bet up to $2,500 back in cash back. That's $2,500 in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Again, it's the best sportsbook out there. From the easy use, instant payouts, there's no better place to play than America's number one sportsbook. And now you can go to FanDuel.com, get your no sweat first bet, FanDuel.com/lockedon, no sweat first bet up to $2,000, $2,500 back. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I do want to take a second saying thank you to everybody tuning into the show. We're going to get to a bunch of your comments today. Really do appreciate it, though, as we continue to build up this community. Go check us out on the Discord. There's a ton of Badger content and talk over there. For everyone listening live, wherever you're going to get this show, thank you so much for joining us here. And let's just keep going. We'll try to bring Justin in here, but I'm not sure how that's going to work with my new graphics package. That's okay. All right, let's jump into Daniel Freitag. So we're gonna try to do: is Daniel Freitag the best recruiting win?
Before we jump, Hank Weber is a nice depth piece to this defensive line.
I like him.
I really like him. Yeah,
I actually like him a lot more than
I saw. Somebody gave him a comparison to who was the guy that just graduated, Henningsen. And I was like, you know what? If he turns into a Henningsen, that's a nice player for the defensive line. But I think he's going to have a little more pass rush than that.
Henningsen was a little bigger. I don't necessarily like. I don't see Henningsen as much, but he's a good player, and they're only taking Plan A guys right now. So I like the pickup, quite frankly, and I think you need more depth on the defensive line. But if you are in the boat where you're looking for high upside guys, I don't think this is your high upside guy. He's never going to be a 12 sack guy or a 10 sack guy.
He's a 5 or 6 max, and that's if they use him as a pass rush defensive end.
I agree. All right, we're going to jump into Freitag. I have to continue to make myself pronounce this correctly because I mispronounced it incorrectly for so long. Here's a list of players. Now, again, I'm just asking: who is the best recruiting win, not the best player? So these are all players from the Greg Gard era. Nate Reavers was a 4-star player out of Minnesota. Johnny Davis was a 3 or 4-star player. Ben Carlson was a high 4-star player out of Minnesota. Not a great offer list, though, from Ben Carlson. Nolan Winter, 4-star player, Iowa, Marquette, Purdue, Minnesota, Xavier, Stanford, Wake. To me, Freitag is, looking at all these players, Freitag is the best recruiting win. Top 75 point guard, great offer list. I think he's the best recruiting win in the Greg Gard area, period.
I think that's valid, and I think we ever had a top 100 kid before? I don't believe we have.
So Ben Carlson was a borderline top one. He was like 109. He was right there. Gosh, he had such an underwhelming career.
Yeah, he did. And when you watch him, it's like, man, he really seems undersized. I thought he was bigger than what he was. When we got to see him on the court, it's like, man, he's a slim 6'8", 6'9". He's not a guy who really has bulk.
So Eric Bengston says, I think it's Winder for me, but Freitag is there. I'm just not sure he was a take for all those other schools. So I've Nolan Winter as just Eric, thank you for the comment. I've Nolan Winter as number 2 on my list. With Nolan Winter's offer list, 4-star forward. I think Nolan Winter is the number 2 recruiting win of the Greg Gard era, but I still have Freitag a little higher. I'm
gonna weigh in on that. Those offers were committable. They were not now because those teams have grabbed other players in the meantime. But when the offer was made, it was a committable offer. I just don't think Freitag moved on or jumped on it like some of those teams like Baylor would have probably liked him to. And they got other guys. They got other highly ranked guys. But I don't think when you have a player like this level, teams don't just turn them away unless they actually have something already in the fold where it's like, all right, sorry, we got somebody that we like either as much or more than you. They don't turn away high level top 100 guys just because, never mind, we didn't really mean it. When we see offers that are non-committable offers, they're typically teams kind of getting their plan B and C guys set up where they're looking at them like, all right, if things don't work out, we'll keep these guys warm. We're going to give them the offer so at least they know that, hey, we see you. We're interested in you. But they don't necessarily put the attention on those players like they do the guys they're really hitting hard. And that's not the way it is with a guy like Freitag.
Yeah. I think Winter and Freitag, Eric Benston said they're 1 and 2 regardless of order. I agree with that. This also points to there's not a ton of incredible recruiting wins in Guards era. There's the good ones. Stephen Crowell was another good one. Carlson was a good one. Jordan Davis was obviously a good one, but there's not a ton of incredible recruiting wins. So this is also speaking to that. There is a great comment up here. Rio C says, what about AJ Storr? AJ Storr is the best IMO. I didn't even think about Storr. Storr is a great recruiting win because whether you're talking transfer portal or high school, it's still recruiting. It's still selling the program.
I mean, there's a chance
other teams.
He has a chance to be a one and done at Wisconsin. He could be here for 1 year and be the NBA. And I think if you look at the physical traits, they're there for him to be that. He's got some refining to do, but he's got the size. He's got the athleticism.
I could see that. I could see Storr as being, I didn't even, to be fair, Rio, and thank you for bringing that up. I completely blanked on thinking transfers. I would probably put Storr ahead of Freitag, to be honest. Storr's a former 5-star recruit, played as a true freshman. Got
Was
better.
he that high?
He was a 5-star, I believe.
Oh, wow.
I'm pretty sure. If not, he was a very high 4-star. His recruiting pedigree was very high. And he had a lot of suitors on the transfer portal. He had a huge list of schools that reached out to him. I think that's a great point. I'm going to change my order based on Rio there. I'm going to go AJ Storr. I think it's a great point.
That's fair. Because I don't think any of us saw us getting Storr either.
So Gus is – oh, sorry. Eric Bankson said Gus is 3 for me. S. Strong said Gus Yalden. S. Strong said Gus Yalden had the best offer list out of all of them. The reason I don't have Gus as high, so I have Gus on my list in my top 5 for what it's worth, but Gus was a Wisconsin fan originally from Wisconsin. And that skew, when I say recruiting win, like the toughest recruiting battle that Greg Gard won is how I framed it. Not necessarily the best player that he brought in or the best offer list. And to me, landing a kid from out of state that didn't grow up a Wisconsin fan, I think it is a more difficult battle. That's how I framed it in my head.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And hey, Ryan, I just wanted to jump in and say hi. I'm going to drop out. Okay, man.
You like the Weber commit, right?
I do. I really like it. I think that he's a nice, solid piece to it, and I think that he's a guy that could rise a little bit.
I agree.
So I look forward to seeing what he does. Yep. Later, guys.
Appreciate it. And by the way, I put on Twitter, I put the link out. If anybody else wants to jump in, feel free. Let's see. Greg Lincecum, friend of the show, says number 1 on Greg Gard's list is Carter Gilmore. That is incorrect, sir. That is incorrect. It is not Carter Gilmore. Let's keep going here. Bo Dragon says Storr proved he can score in college. Freitag hasn't done anything yet. Yeah. And there's a comment coming up that I want to get to as well. I do think we are, and I said this in the last show. I love Freitag. I love the commitment. I love the pickup. I think we could be getting a little too far ahead of that hype train. Like, it's a great pickup. There are a lot of 4-star point guards who don't work out, right? We've seen AJ Storr in a real conference play real minutes and get better as the season went on and score in double digits. So I think the Storr has been proven a little bit, as Bo Dragon says, is a big deal here. We still have to see with Freitag. We don't know for sure yet. Let's get some more of these comments. Bo Dragon also says it's Mordecai's bad passing that's worrying me. Bo, I thought you were all in on football optimism. Let's keep going. Let's see. Here come the Badgers. Shell, what's up, Shell? Shell's a fan of a big friend of the show as well. Really do appreciate you always jumping in. Let's see. A couple more comments here. Jan Volk says, how many 4- and 5-star recruits did Fickell get at Cincinnati? Fickell needs time to get those 4- and 5-star players. He didn't get many at Cincinnati, but it's so hard at Cincinnati, right? It's very difficult to bring that level of talent to that conference or that school. So yeah, I think there needs to be a proof of concept that at Wisconsin, I think people need to see it on the field. And if that happens, then I think that 4- and 5-star talent, especially 4-star talent, could continue coming to Madison. We got another guy in the lobby. Let's go. Let's get John Schutz on the. John, what's up, my friend? Am I still mispronouncing your last name, by the way?
You are still mispronouncing my last name.
Schutz?
So I don't really know where to go with that one, Ryan.
Schutz?
Hey, no problem. How you doing?
Good. The Weber commitment, the Woodward commitment, where are you at? Are you excited? Or are you just kind of same old?
I'm gonna kind of say the BuckyCast dropped a podcast last night, and I specifically talked about Hank Weber as one of the guys who was visiting. And Hank Weber is just not a dude. He's not going to excite you. There's nothing in his huddle film where I'm going, oh my God, this is a dominant guy. He's a solid player. He's sort of like a Tristan Monday type guy. And that's the first name that pops into my head. It's hard to get excited for those guys because, this is an investment. He's not going to come in year one and, win a starter or backup job unless something crazy happens. But, he could be a solid player in 3 or 4 years, or he could be, playing at FCS. Mm-hmm. I guess you just don't know.
I liked him a little. To be fair, I also like Tristan Monday. I did like him.
And from the sound of it, Tristan Monday's having a good camp with Arizona State.
Yep.
But again, Tristan Monday, when he committed, it was like nobody was like, oh my gosh, phenomenal. and Mike Jarvis, I think same thing. These are guys who they can come in, they can put on some weight. They've got some quick, some hand strength. It seems like a solid pickup, but I'm not going to go any further than solid because I haven't seen enough on Hank Weber.
I think where people get excited is they have faith in this staff, right? They think of a staff.
They do.
And I would say if we know for sure if they're taking guys in June, that the staff is really high on them. This isn't like we need to fill out the class thing. And that's where I would, because I think the staff is pretty good at developing talent. We've saw it at Cincinnati for the most part. So that's where I like it. But I agree, it's not a ceiling raiser, probably.
Yeah, this isn't something that, this is a player that the previous staff was on as well and probably would have gotten, I think, as well. It's not one of those things where you're like, oh, raise the roof. We got this guy. That being said, like I said before, I'm not saying he's going to be a bad player. Mm-hmm. Far from it. He could wind up being very good, very solid at that defensive end spot. 6'4", 6'5", probably can get up to 280, 290. He's got the tools. It's just a question of, do those tools develop? I mean, I can go back classes and classes. Boyd Dietzen was another guy who was sort of in that same sort of realm.
We could play. We could play Name This Badger.
Yeah, exactly.
Lineman.
But yeah, so I'm curious to see how it turns out. I like the fact that they're picking up guys pretty rapidly. In succession here. It sounds like, more is on the way. So,
yeah. Mitchell Bilek says, I get why people are fixated on the 4- and 5-star players, but all good programs need developmental 3 stars for depth at the very least, but potentially more, especially in the defensive line, right? And Mitchell, thank you for the comment. Like defensive line, offensive line, John, some of these guys, it's hard at those positions to know in high school because they're going up against guys that are much smaller. I don't know. I think at some level you just got to throw bodies at those spots. You have to get good bodies, obviously, but you need numbers.
Yeah, and right now Wisconsin doesn't have that. They don't have the deep numbers on the defensive line or that overwhelming level of skill where, guys fit in that way. Hopefully, he turns into, I think of other undersized guys who wound up in the 3-4, like Alec James. I don't know if he's got the athleticism to be an Alec James or a Chikwe Obashi type player. But Matt Henningsen is another guy who was, undersized, wouldn't wow anybody looking at his huddle, but, wound up being a very good player for Wisconsin. So, it could swing either way. Like I said, he could be in 2-3 years, he could wind up being a solid backup or a starter, or, he could be somewhere else. And that's what you get when you're in that, the mid-range sort of 5.5, I think, on Rivals, and 885 overall for the 247 composite. That's what you get with those sorts of guys. It's a coin flip. And some of those turn out really well. Some of them turn out, not so great. But it's still a solid get. If for no other reason than they finally punched into Tennessee, and specifically Brentwood Academy. That's a big deal.
When I think of Tennessee football recruiting for Wisconsin, I always immediately think of Kurt Phillips and his 3 broken knees. That's where I go.
That was not Kurt Phillips' fault.
It was not.
He won a Big Ten title.
Listen. That's where I go when we talk Tennessee. I want to ask you this because I was talking about Daniel Freitag, whose name I now pronounce correctly.
Yes, same here.
Is he the best recruiting win in the Greg Gard era? And just not best player, best recruiting win. And I went back and looked. So you're talking Nate Reavers, who's a 4-star, Nolan Winter, who's a 4-star, Johnny Davis, the in-state 3 or 4-star. Ben Carlson was a high 4-star player when we picked him up. I think Freitag is the best win.
What are we using as the metric?
The toughest recruiting battle.
Toughest recruiting battle to win. Toughest recruiting battle we've won, I would have to say, would be Nolan Winter. For the life of me, I still don't know how we pried him away from Minnesota. I thought he was like, if any kid from Lakeville was going to go to Minnesota, it was going to be him. Legacy, Dad played for the Gophers in their glory years back in the 90s. And that to me was like, wow, Greg Gard really pulled that one off. And, despite all the lack of success, well, we call it lack of success, the ups and downs of the last 8 months, I remember saying earlier, like this year, back in I think it was February, Greg Gard needs to get on his horse and go. Well, this is a great way to get that horse spurred and going. If it's not the most impactful recruitment, because I don't know what the level of competition was like to get Freitag. He could have played it out into the summer and seen if he got any more offers. Greg Gard wore him. I don't want to say he wore him down. That has negative connotations. But he stuck with him for 2 years. Didn't offer any other point guards. And that's hard to do because Greg Gard has been caught with his eggs all in one basket before and had it blow up in his face. This time he took that strategy and he made it work. And there's the great debate. Is Freitag, is he just was he a better football player than basketball player? Does his game translate better to basketball or to football? I don't really care about that. Wisconsin needs explosive athletes on the floor in basketball, and they've added 2 in the last couple of months with AJ Storr and now Daniel Freitag. So if they can keep this up, if they get Con Knippel or Jackson McAndrew or both,
that'd be incredible.
That would be great. But they can keep that running. They've got in the 25 class Kai Rogers and Davion Hannah. If they win the Davion Hannah or Con Knippel recruitments, that will be the biggest win of the Greg Gard era. Because the Badgers have yet to land on those really high 4-star in-state players. They've been doing all this in Minnesota, but not in-state, other than Johnny Davis, who's a 3-star.
And they took his brother to help secure that commitment.
Yeah.
So, certainly worth it. A couple other ones here. A lean forward, Victor Jones. No, it is not a lean forward. I'm sure that was a joke. He also said Bronson Canning, that was a Bo.
That was a Bo Ryan.
That was a tough battle though. Like Canning very, very possible, very nearly went to UNC.
Yep.
So here's a question here. Bo Dragon brings it up. Bo Dragon says, if Gard has all these great recruits and they still suck, is it a time to fire them? Is it a time to fire him then? See, I don't think he's sucked though. Like that's the problem. They
made the NIT.
And they won the Big Ten regular season title last year. This is the disconnect that I continue to have with Greg Gard. Now, he's had his issues too. Like I've had my issues with Greg Gard, but I don't think he's stuck. But now, if he gets these level recruits and he misses the tournament again and again, then you can't continue to miss the main tournament at Wisconsin.
If he missed the tournament 3 years in a row, I'd say he'd probably be gone based on the players that he's brought in.
Oh, would like to know if you're joking, by the way, John. Are you joking? They made the NIT? Like that's an account. Just clarifying.
Based on what happened with that team, losing Tyler Wall, and Tyler Wall while he wasn't having his greatest season, was the linchpin of that team, and they lost him. And that's when the spiral started. And then right after Wall came back, Max Klesmit got knocked out. They were running on a bench that had virtually nothing. You can blame Gard for that. That's fine. That's partly his fault. But you had a team with like 6 operable D1 players. They just barely crawled into the NIT. And then they went on, a 3-game win streak that no one thought they could actually pull off. They looked like a dispirited, broken team by the big time of the Big Ten tournament. And he turned it around and he got them to win. And very nearly, if it weren't for another classic Badger offensive meltdown, it was a weird year. Weird years happen. It wasn't a disaster. Back when they missed all tournaments completely, finished with a losing record. I think that was 2018-19 or right around there. That was a disaster.
Yeah.
But this was more of it was a disappointment, but it wasn't a catastrophe. And they gained some experience through that. They got through the adversity. He held the team together for the most part. He brought in AJ Storr. He's got a decent class coming in of freshmen. He'll have a better bench.
Yeah.
Now, if he misses the tournament again this year, there's going to be all sorts of pressure on him in 2024. This is something where Greg Gard sort of he's got to keep building small win upon small win upon small win into bigger wins. And Freitag is one of those, and AJ Storr were both part of building that wall to get them over the top. But he's got to keep putting bricks in that wall. Con Knippel. Doing well against a difficult non-conference schedule. All that stuff helps him build up back to where he was a couple of years ago when he was, untouchable. So
they're not missing the tournament this year, though. I mean, barring crazy injuries, they're not missing the tournament.
I wouldn't think so either, but crazier things have happened, so I'm not going to worry about that.
Yeah,
Let's cross that bridge when we get to it.
There's a bunch of comments in here as well. Let's see if we can get to.
How many more people think I'm crazy? That's what I want to know.
There's probably a couple. Listen, there's always a couple. Darren Wyman says Badgers will be back in the top 4 of the Big Ten again this year. Oh, by the way, Joe Weimer, you're in the queue. I can see you, but it says your device isn't connected. So if you're trying to join into the show, just disconnect and come back in, Joe. Darren Wyman says they'll be top 4 in the Big Ten this year. I could see that. Like,
it could happen. Yeah, very well could happen.
Now, that means AJ Storr has to be a hit, right? That means
AJ Storr's averaging at least 16 points a game, and all the other what?
I don't know about 16 for that. This is going to be a balanced score.
In the top 4, they need some scoring. They're going to have all. I think they're honestly going to have 4 or 5 or all 5 starters averaging double-digit points, and getting some scoring off the bench to get them into the top 4 of the Big Ten. And people will say, well, the Big Ten is still recovering. Illinois retains a lot of talent. Mm-hmm. Michigan State just brought in an all-world recruiting class. And, Iowa's no joke. As much as we might like to joke that they are, they aren't. Zach Edey's back at Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
Rutgers is good. Maryland's on its way back. Don't sit there and sleep on this and say, the Big Ten's a cakewalk. Wisconsin can do this. They can, but they're gonna need some scoring. It's not just they can't just count on holding everybody to 60 or fewer points and winning those ugly, bar brawl games. They're gonna have to do some scoring this year.
Those long scoring droughts have to stop. Those are backbreakers.
Those Jekyll and Hyde games where they're great in the first half and terrible in the second half, those can't continue. If those continue, he could lose his job after two bad years if they continue to play that sort of game.
But that's why you bring in an AJ Storr, right? Like AJ Storr is that athlete that's going to break a scoring drought. And by the way, like not everybody gets better the more time they spend in college. Like did Brad Davidson ever get a lot better year by year? He did incrementally, but Connor Essegian is going to get better.
Yeah.
Like he is going to make a big jump from a freshman to a sophomore year. He's not going to wear down. That slump he had at the end of the year is just a freshman wearing down because they asked him to do too much. So he's going to get a lot better, guys. Like this team is going to be better next year.
The backcourt, I think that entire starting 5 was just gassed by the end of the year. They had very little support. And now, they've switched out a number of players, but I think Kamari McGee will probably be better, more serviceable. Can maybe rest Chucky Hepburn a little bit more. John Blackwell's coming in. I don't know if he'll contribute or not, but moving Max Klesmit to the bench as your 6th man, that could turn out really well. And then, having Gus Yalden, having Nolan Winter, so you don't have a vacuum behind Stephen Crowell and Tyler Wall. Tyler Wall is going to be back. He's going to be healthy. He's got to be motivated because he had a terrible, terrible Big Ten season. And I don't know that he was good. He probably wants to play overseas or in some sort of professional league. He's got to show what he showed at the end of his junior year rather than what he showed at the end of his first senior year.
Yeah. Well, I think putting better pieces around him is going to do that. Like he can be the focal point, especially a focal point on a not a healthy, like he wasn't healthy at the end. So, there's like a lot of contributing things. But I think you put better weapons around him. You get another year of growth from Essegian. Storr comes in. You have more front court depth with Yalden, who's going to play right away. Like Yalden is playing right away. And you had Carter Gilmore playing the 5 last year for Pete's sake. That's on Greg Gard, right? You talked about it. That's on Greg Gard for roster construction, but that doesn't work.
If you can get Carter Gilmore to give you 5 minutes when you just need somebody to occupy the opposing center or power forward for a little while, that's great. That's exactly the role Carter Gilmore should be in.
Mm-hmm.
He cannot be your primary backup in the front court. That is a recipe for disaster, and we saw it last year.
Yep, and it's not on him. Like
no, that's not his game.
No,
it's not his game. He was put in a terrible position.
The Commandant says, as always, my friend, thank you for jumping on the show. I'm not sure Gard survives if he doesn't make the NCAA tournament this year unless crazy injuries wipe out the team. I would mostly agree with that statement. Like I don't know if he can miss the tournament again
I don't know. It depends on how they finish and who gets into the tournament. There are circumstances where I could see him surviving one more than, Chris McIntosh saying you got one more chance. Like if he pulls in this good 2024 recruiting class, they're going to give him another shot. There's a lot of talent there, and especially if they can start making inroads on the 25 class, I don't think you just go ahead and fire him after 2 mediocre years if he's pulling in recruits finally, because it might just be a case of, he's finally filling in all those talent gaps that existed from all these other recruiting classes. But that remains to be seen. This is all in the future. But in terms of the original question, Daniel Freitag, this is a big win for Gard. It's probably, I won't say it's the toughest recruiting battle he won, but it's probably the most consequential one since Johnny Davis. That's the only other one I can think of that would have the level of consequence that this one did.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. John, my friend, thank you for jumping in as always. To everybody in the chat, John just dropped a podcast the other day. John, definitely take a second, let people know where they can find what you're doing too.
Yeah, you can follow us on Twitter at the BuckyCast. Just look for the BuckyCast. It's available on Spotify, Amazon, Apple. It should be available, wherever you find podcasts. And also, you can send us an email. We are the BuckyCast43@gmail.com. We have a YouTube channel that we haven't had up in a while because our video editor is on a long sabbatical. But that will eventually be back up again. So yeah, check us out. We're just a fan podcast, and we mix in a little beer drinking along with that.
Nothing wrong with that at all. On Wisconsin, everybody. Coming up later this week, we got Brian Smith coming back on the show to talk recruiting and a big-time basketball show where we're going to get 4 people on. You're not going to want to miss that. Dylan's joining that one as well. So a lot of content coming up this week for sure. On Wisconsin, thank you all so much for jumping on the show as always, and we'll talk tomorrow.
Peace out, people.